Julia.
Anita.
Andy.
Dean.
Kavisha.
Yes, darling, please.
Right.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, God.
Yes, got it. I'll give them to you after. Lovely. Open. Oh, good.
The eyes widen just when I go around the room. Must be recognising something. Good to see you all.
Good to see you.
And you all know what it's all about, of course. What they call non-duality, Advaita, or the one essence. And they say that is all there is. But we've got a few here looking into it. There's a hell of a lot out there that are believing in this idea of their person, this individual. Miss out on what the ones that have understood it and grasped it down through the ages have pointed out. It's only one essence, only the one thing that has the capacity and ability to pattern, shape and form, express and play or act or whatever you like to call it, as everything. Only the one. Non-dual, undivided, absolutely one essence. And all the pattern, shapes and forms which you and I and everything in this room and the room itself are only pattern, shapes and forms appearing and expressing as seemingly separate, but are still only that one essence. When you look into it, you'll see it's so. Just a little bit of simple investigation. Why do we need to do that? Because each and every one of us, when we were born, came into being and learnt words, took on the idea that we are separate individuals, persons. And from that idea of separation comes division. With division comes separation, isolation, loneliness, sadness, happiness, all the conceptual imagery we have through the words we picked up are believed in. And added to this pattern or shape and form through which it's expressing, which we call body, minds or persons or individuals or me. But it couldn't be anything other than the one. Everybody in this room is breathing right now. Each one got a separate portion of air you're taking in? Or is it the one air? We're all sitting in space. Each one got their own space. Hear a lot of people say, I want to stay in my own space. Bit hard. We don't look at these things. And we all believe we are separate. Male, female, different races, different things, different concepts. Where does the vision come about from? Doesn't it come about from words, thoughts, ideas, images we've got? How many words were you born with? Were you born with any words at all? When you look back on it and investigate, you realise you weren't born with any words. But with the learning of words, which didn't happen till we picked up the language around about 2.5, when the capacity of reasoning developed in you, and we learnt words, that we took on this sense of separation. When you were a little child, you had no words. How could you say you were born? How could you say you were separate? You were living, doing things, but you had no idea there was such a thing as separation, or good or bad, till we learnt words. It tells you in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word. That's where it all begins, when we learnt words. Adam and Eve are supposed to be the first so-called two humans that came into being. It's just another story, like all the other stories. We're in paradise. Had no words. Living in the Garden of Eden, paradise. Everything was beautiful, wonderful. But they ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. You have no idea if it's an apple or something else. But the tree of knowledge, what's knowledge? The learning of words, concepts, ideas. And of course, with taking on those concepts and believing in them, what have we done? We've separated ourselves. Look around the room. Do you see anything that's not separate? Everything in this room, we're separate from the space. We're separate from the air, the seat you're sitting in, the person next to you, all appearing to be separate. Yet, it's all the content of space. Space is no thing. Nothing at all. Does it have any distance? Has it got any closeness? Can you divide it? Can you separate? Can you grasp it? But also, can you postulate or think of anything at all that can be outside of space? And you realise there's nothing that can be outside of space. And some of the texts and scriptures have pointed this out down through the ages, the so-called ages, because when you look into the ages, it's time. And when you investigate time, you see that, is that any concept any more real than the other concepts we hold? It's not when you look into it. So without that concept of time, it's all as it is, right here, right now. And you can't say it's not there, because it's appearing, seemingly so. Appearing as separate, appearing as different. And we take where we're seeing from, this appearance to be me, or I, a separate entity, something that's separate and apart from, regrading by this great concept we believe in called God. That's where we think we're God-given creatures. Put this label God on, and we immediately set that up as something superior, something higher and greater than what I am. But isn't it just another word? And it tells you in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word. That's where it all begins, with the Word. And when you look back on that, you'll see that's there. Again, look back as far as you can remember. For the first couple of years of your life, could you remember what was going on there? You can't. But you were living then. When people pointed out and put out a time, you were functioning for a certain period of time. You were no longer the little embryo. You're no longer the little baby. You're a young child, which is the same as you're no longer the little child right now. You're a youth, middle-aged, old age, all different shapes and forms. Constantly transient, but each are still claiming it to be me, or I, the separate entity. Tells you in the scriptures, I and the Father are one. If you believe there's something greater it's the father or the mother or anything else. It's still only the one. And the Advaita is one without a second, implying there's no other at all. It's not two. Never was two. Never could be two. And that's all that needs to happen. Recognise that that is all there is. You are the one essence that's patterning, shaping, forming, appearing, expressing as everything. Only that and always have been that. But we've taken ourselves to be this separate entity. Now we think we have to become that. That is an enlightening experience. What's this enlightenment they talk about? We think it's a great and wonderful burst of absolute beauty and wonderment and everything. Got all these concepts on it. Concepts fictionalised, but making all sorts of it. But what happens if you have a look and see for yourself? Instead of carrying around all this burden of concepts and ideas, recognise it is that one. And is it being that one, why does it have to fear? Why does it have to be anxious or unhappy or depressed? Why does it need to be anything other than what it is? And without putting the concepts on it and breaking up with the words, you've had the taste of that many times. When it's been joyful, it's been compassionate, loving, happy. But because we've taken on the words and divided, division is seeming separation. One has seemingly become two. But you take any stick, break it off. You say, I've got a stick here. And it's two-ended. Is the stick two-ended? Or is it the same stick in which one end is different to the other? One coin. We've got two sides on it. The gold bangle, bracelet and earrings are made up of gold, if they are gold. We put the label bangle on it, put other metals into it, bangle and earrings, and say it's gold or it's silver or it's this, that, put different labels on it, but it's only gold anyway. It's all it's ever been. Leaving it in its oneness, in its simplicity. And there's nothing simpler than one. What do you have to seek? What do you have or need to become? Why would you want to? If you know and recognise, I am the Absolute, I am that reality. And the more, instead of taking on board more concepts, more ideas, more images, which I do when I've learnt words and get ideas and plans and positions, I just basically sit back and relax into what I am. And what I am is the livingness, the beingness that's just happening by itself. Out there, when you look outside the window or even in this room, there is light. And when you investigate, you see it's the earth rolling around the sun. Now the light is the sun. And the earth rolling around in it has different patterns, shapes and forms and all things appearing in it. Is it the sun rolling around the earth? It's not. The sun is seemingly static. The earth is moving. And all these things appear in that sunlight. We look around the room and we're seeing different pattern shapes and forms. Take the pattern shapes and forms to be real. But who are they or what are they appearing to? appearing to this conceptual image that I've taken on the idea that it is me, a separate entity. It's picked up words along the way, which I didn't have. All these concepts and ideas, words and images, have all been collected as I grew and acquired the capacity of reasoning, learning things. And what have these ancient teachers pointed to? Go back to the Taoists or the Buddhists or Hindus or the early ones thousands of years ago. They all point out that the oneness of it all. Some different states, different stages, some clearer than others, some are more attuned to it than others, but they're still pointing out the one. But we have stuck to the idea of separate and think we need to become more, because it's not too good when you're living from this dualistic point of view. It's constantly transient. You breathe in and breathe out, air in and air out. Your heart expands and contracts, pumping the life around your body. It's all a vibration, all a movement of energy. And the energy, the vibration implies is other than one, divides it and separates it. And in that division, trying to separate it, instead of realising what they tell us, that it's simple, it's only the non-dual, one without a second. We divide it trying to become something. And that makes it worse, because we form more concepts, more ideas, more images. And if I do this, or learn this, or take this up, or cast this out, or get rid of it, I will become something different, something better. What about what I am? Now there is another thing. There's that belief comes up, I am. What's that I amness imply? A sense of presence, a sense of knowingness, a sense of beingness. Now, that's this pattern through which is expressed through this body, which has all the organs, brains and sinews and life to express through, is claiming it as me, as the person, as a separate entity. Individual and whole has now been separated, divided. Separation too implies two, me and other than me. So there's me here, and I'm not sure of the other, especially when the capacity of reasoning hasn't developed. How can I claim this me to be other when it's only the one? And in that claiming to be the other, too, we've set up the dualism. And now this one here, trying to find out what it is, it's got all these mental images and mental concepts. Parents told me you're little Billy or little Johnny, whatever your name might be. Now this is me. I am little Johnny. You're not little Johnny, or she's not little Johnny. There's something else. So I'm separate from them. And with that sense of separation, well, I'm not too sure of them. They might take away my toys or my food or something like that, so not sure of them. So you get the fear, the anxiety, the stress, the guilt, all because of this sense of separation with an animal or a bird out there that I haven't learnt the name of, haven't taken to be real, and I'm not sure of that, or an insect, or anything else. And then separating and taking to believe something other, the fear, and the anxiety, the stress, all the psychological suffering comes on. Now this human race, one intelligence energy, one life, absolute. If it was expressing like that, what would you call it? Wouldn't it be like what they pointed out or tried to point out years ago where it all began? Paradise, Garden of Eden, where nothing was wrong anymore, where the living was easy, a natural functioning. But what is it like from this point of view of separation? How many different concepts, ideas and points of view are there in this room for a start off, let alone the world and everything that's appearing in it? I wonder why we're in such a hell of a mess. Why wouldn't it be so if that's the way it's looked at? What's the way out? Well, they tell you that. They shout it out all the time. Know thyself. Know thyself. Be self-aware, be self-knowing. Be the absolute. Be what you are, not what you appear to be. How do you come to recognise myself? What is the self? Is it what I believe to be a personal self? Or is it what they tell me? It is absolute. Absolute. What can you add to absolute? Nothing, not a single thing. It wouldn't be absolute. To try and take the smallest thing away from it, it would no longer be absolute, would it? Or as they put it in Buddhism, the great perfection. If you took the smallest thing away from the perfect, it wouldn't be perfect anymore. They tell you that in the scriptures, if from the perfect to perfect. Perfect is taken, only the perfect remains. So take all these concepts, ideas and images away from yourself. And if you are what I'm pointing to, the absolute, what changes are there going to be? Isn't there going to be a natural ease of being where you're not entangled in all these concepts, all these beliefs, all this anxiety, guilt, state, remorse? Wouldn't it be a sense of being well? Nothing wrong? Nothing excluded or included? As they point out again in Buddhism, the great perfection is non-conceptual awareness. Now that's the thing to look at, isn't it? Is there anyone in this room who is not aware? And nobody will tell me I'm not unaware. You all know that awareness is there. But what awareness is it? What can you say awareness is? A lot of us have got different concepts about what consciousness or awareness is, but not realising you couldn't, if you didn't have that word and there wasn't such a word, what could you say about anything if you're unaware? What were you before you were born? When you were growing in the womb and the first couple of years of your life you were living, that awareness was there, but there was nothing being added to it or taken away from it. It was just a natural, spontaneous functioning. Now, they tell us you've got to become something. Well, are you being right now? You're going to take all the concepts off, and wouldn't you be that pure being? Would there be any need to become anything other than what is, than what you are? And have a look and have a think. There are times when you've had taste of it. Of course you have. I hear it often. I fell in it, I saw everything was right, but the me came back again. Anyone ever found this me? Has it ever been anything other than a word, an idea, a concept? That we put the sense of being me on it as separate? Or has it always and ever been that life? Has the me changed? Still the same me there when I first learnt the word. But the pattern shape and form that's been expressing it is constantly transient, constantly changing. And the energy of belief going into these words are taking a toll on this believed in conceptual image. They're making it emotional, feeling, thought, feeling and emotion, thoughts coming up, feelings and emotion, and stirs it up and does all sorts of things. And most of us living from that point of view are not very happy, not very on. Some of us get on all right without it. We don't have to do much about it. Others have a little bit of a taste and nature's much better. We can get by. Others are completely locked into it and are self-destructive. And in that self-destruction, we try to destroy everything that comes in our way and impeding it or trying to stop it. And involved in all this conflict. It can be pretty miserable, as I know for a fact. And I know the other side of it too. Where in the settling into it, everything can become pretty nice, pretty beautiful, pretty loving. And it's natural, and it's effortless, it's spontaneous, and it's timeless, it's spaceless, it's ever fresh and ever new, beginningless and endless. Beginningless and endless means, if I take away the concept of time, time is beginning, middle and end. So I've taken the idea of being, becoming, and recognising the spontaneous functioning. But right now I look out the window and I see the branches on the plant moving. Is the plant moving those branches? Or is the space that the air is appearing in, blowing and moving it? The plant is doing nothing but grow, facing towards the sunlight, taking up the moisture and using the earth to feed and live. What are we doing? Anyone who's not breathing? Anyone whose heart is not beating? Anyone who's not hungry or thirsty at times? Anyone who's not knowing what to do when the hunger or the thirst comes up? But is there a majority of us have little taste of it, don't investigate it further, see what the other that appears to have more than us, and we want that? Or seem to be the others that are going to take it from us, and we fear them. We need to get rid of them. We need to hold our place and complete our grasp on this beingness. Grasp it for a certain amount of so-called time. But see, that things that's trying to grasp it, it's the same body that when you were a little child, first learning words and that, couldn't walk, couldn't do anything. Now look what it's doing. It's growing old, falling apart, dissipating. We're fearful, we don't want it to go. Not realising that we didn't know it before it came about. It developed of its own, like you formed in the womb of your mother and the father, and the life that was in them formed from other life. And that life before them was in the essence of the food, and the things that are on the planet and the earth. And that life, as we know it, is always there. You can't even put the concept of time on that. It's a spontaneous emanation, a spontaneous vibration, a movement. But it appears in all its diversity. And each and every one of us have had some enjoyment out of it. Quite a bit, some more than others. And others have a lot of troubles and problems with it. But in the recognition of your own nature, if as Wei Wu Wei said, why are you unhappy? And he says, because everything you say and everything you think and everything you do is for yourself. And he says, there isn't one. Now he's saying there isn't one. And all the scriptures, no matter what side of the fence they come from, they all point out to that one, as a God, as a higher power, or something greater. As an all power, something greater. And we think because we're not functioning too well, and others seem to be, that there is such a thing. But why would they all consistently point out it's only the one essence? Because they've seen it, they've recognised it, they know the truth. And he says, as Wei Wu Wei says, for yourself, and there isn't one. Isn't what? What's the one? The self. What's the self? Well, the self is me, or I, the personal self. But they don't tell you that if you look into it. You read it, you've heard it, and you've read it many times like I did, and seen it. Yeah, that's pretty good, go on. But I'm still this personal self. But is the person the reality? Person, an individual, a separate entity. Person is not reality, they'll tell you. It comes from the ancient Latin, persona, the mask. It's pointing out what they point out, that we've learnt concepts and can obscure our true nature, our very life, with the words. With the picking up of words and learning words, we've learned concepts, ideas and images. Nisargadatta tells you nothing can trouble you except your own imagination imaging in. Talking about that word imagine. And that's what's troubling us, what we imagine. They talk about the snake in the rope. As one of the ways they pointed out. When was the rope ever a snake? When could it ever be the snake? It's only a piece of wet rope that somebody in the dark night doesn't see it. But in his image, in his mind, he's got a concept of snake. He might have seen other things that were snake. And he extends on this piece of wet rope that rolls under his feet. And he's tied on a snake. And immediately the hair stands on end, the goosebumps arise, and there's this sensation, bang, bang. Fear and the trembling starts, and there's anguish, fear. We try to do something about it. Well, what's with all these thoughts we take on board? Somebody calls you an arsehole, and you get all up in the air about it. You get this terrible image of what it is, I'm insulted. But if you had a look at an arsehole, what is it? It's just a round hole. Well, isn't it?
Nobody else was a dilute.
I see the cats, well, the cats have got one. Well, that goes with any other name too. Seeing it as it is.
Next to it.
Hmm?
What's next to the ass?
You've started something now, Bob.
I think I'll leave it at that. You can carry it on from there. Arseholes. Why are you laughing? You're supposed to be offended. Just goes to show whichever way you take it, doesn't it? Go on.
Yes, so Jyoti says this was hilarious, and Manju says good morning. And apart from that, we had a couple of meetings ago, I think it was Marty, who pointed out that majority of a communication, and that's the NLP discovery, the research, majority of the communication comes from the body language, tonality, and the gestures, not from words. So you were not convincing.
I'm a failure.
You're a failure. Take it on board and get sad. Yeah, well, weirdly enough, nearly every one of us, when you believe in a self-center, fear of failure, an idea that I'm a failure, is the most debilitating, depressive thought one could think of. And it is believed. The idea of I'm failure, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable enough, there's something wrong with me, there is something missing. And this is also just a description of the feeling that can't be pinpointed, that feeling of separation which is translated to the thought. It's just funny to watch. And then, yeah, question. Anyone would like to start? Questioning? Asking? Sharing? Because there's no one from the community, 20 plus people who actually have any questions. I think they've been regulars, they've been with us, and yeah, they understand that the questioning, the questioner is the problem, the search is the problem.
You don't have to ask questions, tell us your version, what you see.
Yeah.
Somebody else might hear it, might be different than that. So the words that they can grasp or understand, or they might understand what's being said there.
You're a tough act to follow, Bob.
But the most beautiful thing about non-duality, and this is probably what every speaker ever tries to do, although I don't know what their motivation is, that would be narrative anyway, is to make it as as simple as it gets, because it is super simple. Every word is further complicating the simplicity of it. So if any one of you is moved to say, you know, how you could put it in just one line, and how simple it is, you know. You are aware, you're not unaware, you are aware that you are. Go on, Julia.
I think it's part of what I guess what's coming up here is just this idea of that when we're little babies, we don't have any thoughts coming through. We're all little Buddhas. You know, I've had children, and you ever stare into a newborn's eye, you can see that that's true. I don't know, it was occurring to me today how we have a tendency to see, when we see these human patternings, to take them as a solid thing and not notice, well, there's no solidity to any of it.
Yeah. It's a good point.
And nothing else to say.
And you said in one line, if you could think of one line, what came up for me is we just are.
Yeah, lovely.
Take all the concepts of it.
That's it. Yeah. And I love what Julia pointed out, the fluidity of it. You know, if you really look at what's static about any way the persona appears, what's static about the way the body appears, what's static about the thinking, the feelings, all is fluid. I mean, you could see how many concepts through the day, if you still believe the concepts of yourself, how much they are changing. Oh, I'm all right. Oh, I'm not too bad. Oh, yeah, I'm disgusting. Oh, I hate myself. You know, all those concepts, they constantly changing. What's there to trust? What's there to believe? Even the common sense would say that the narrative is unreliable, especially when it relates to the self that can't be found. You can rely on a narrative of a sport commentator, more or less, but the narrative that is commenting on the self that can't be found. That's what a joke.
So many stories, none of them real.
Yeah.
So the lovely line that you used before, Bob, about the arsehole, taking offence, getting called that, what is it that takes offence? You cannot. So those things just wash through you like everything, you know.
Yeah.
Let it go through to the keeper.
When I'm chatting with people about this, because I do love babbling about this sometimes, I really love your pointer of intelligence energy. I mean, can you think of anything that exists without energy, right? So you calling us assholes, I've actually called people my dog shit. You are my dog shit because you're everything. So, yeah, same thing.
See, one word's not sufficient, is it?
But 1,000's not enough, right?
That's right.
Bob is often, especially when he wants to illustrate something, when he has one-on-one meetings at home, and usually the red cat, the other, I don't know, he's hiding somewhere. He sits on his lap and he rests and he spends as much time as Bob on that recliner with him. And Bob, as an illustration, says, "Look, I say to that cat every day that I have big bag, and I will put some rocks into those bags, and I will take them to the river and drop them with that bag." And he says, "Do you think they take any notice?" They come and lie on his lap. And they come when, especially Pesto, the red one, if he demands attention, he will walk over his keyboard. He will poke the nose in the camera, in his face. He's running the show. He doesn't have any inferiority complex or any idea that he's not enough. And doesn't get offended.
I have a million questions.
Lovely.
And I'm too scared to ask one of them because I'm sitting over here and you're sitting over there looking at me. So let's just start there.
We're all just a bunch of assholes, it's fine.
What is it?
It's just a bunch of assholes, that's fine.
That would be the common theme, I can see that. You got your
Now you're kind of curious. You have to ask one question.
I'm going to ask one question. Why am I scared to ask a question? That's what's coming up. There's a lot of confusion.
You want me to answer it?
Someone answer it.
Gilbert, if Bob wants to answer that, you want to say it first, Bob? Then.
Yeah. The belief that you're a separate entity, an individual, a person, you've isolated yourself. What will they think of me if I ask this? Maybe it's not right. You've got no confidence in what you're believing, what you say. So we get upset and fearful, or don't ask the question. But the point is not to ask the question, who's it happening to? Who's the questioner? Have a look at that. Why or who is it that's asking this question? Am I this body? Am I this mind? Take you back to investigating our own self-nature, to see what's there. What is the reality and what's the thoughts, concepts? Can you negate your beingness right now?
No.
Can you tell me what being is?
No.
Well, knowing, but there's words we wouldn't, but you know that's that aliveness or life. They're concepts we put on. You can't negate it. But the person, can you tell me what the person is?
Thoughts, uncomfortable sensations in my body.
Yeah, the one that's feeling this, the one that's frightened to ask the question, the one, the conceptual idea or image you got on. There's somebody or something there that's other than the reality.
Should we give Gilbert a voice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar. That, you know, the me is a fiction, the total fiction. So innately we know that. We all know that the me is just a mask that we wear. But, you know, because it's not real, there's a sense of fear, because the whole mechanism is to try and reinforce this image of self and make it real, but it's not real. The person is not reality. What is reality? That's a real question. What is reality? And it's pointed out in the ancient texts that the unmanifest is reality. The noumenon is reality. But the mind is like a mirror that reflects the noumenon as phenomena, seemingly separate things. All phenomena is an appearance. It has no independent existence or volition, even though it appears to have volition. As people and animals and things, they all appear to be separate things or entities that have volition and they're doing something. But it's all consciousness. Consciousness is what's doing it. And it's one consciousness. It's not your consciousness, my consciousness, and you know, that's just the mind reflecting the one as many. And the mind seemingly divides the oneness or the wholeness into all of these different things in a seeming personal sense. I like this, I don't like that. So, but is that person that's on a seesaw going up and down, is it real? The fulcrum point in a seesaw is not moving. So to get off the seesaw, you have to find the fulcrum point. And if you really examine a fulcrum point, it has no existence in phenomena. If you had a microscope strong enough to look closely, all you would see is molecules going around and round some invisible axis. And the whole universe is moving upon that emptiness. So the me is a fiction, and it's the seeming cause of all of our psychological suffering. But psychological suffering is not real. But, you know, nobody wants to hear that because they've invested all of these stories about me and my suffering and oh my God, and all, you know, I had a terrible childhood and my father used to beat me up and my mother was horrible to all, you know, stories. But, you know, come back, investigate. Is the me real? And what is it that knows that it's not real? Innately it knows it's not real. So we're all actors on a stage playing roles, you know, and we wear a mask. And, you know, like I think the Japanese have a form of entertainment called No or something, where the actors wear masks, beautiful wooden carved masks. But at the end of the play, they take the masks off and they go home. You know, the mask sits on the hook in the theatre. You can't do anything, you can't see anything, you can't hear anything. The mask is nothing but an image. So why enslave myself, my essence, to this image of myself? It's going to betray me one way or another, over and over and over again. And that's the suffering. But, you know, find that something that doesn't change. What is it that doesn't change? It's not a thing in phenomena, it's no thing. You know, it's like the sky. The sky has clouds in it. It appears to be blue, but at night time it's not blue. And the clouds are not stuck to the sky. They are phenomena which is constantly changing, ever changing. But all the changing things are changing upon that which doesn't change. So, you know, like there's the physical body which is appearing in space. The space is not changing. The body is changing. The heart's beating, the breathing, the thoughts and emotions and things are all constantly changing. And in our desperation, we try and fix that changing thing into something solid that I can cling on to. And that's the suffering. Let it be. Like Bob says, leave it as it is. Unmodified, uncorrected, something else, something, whatever it is.
Unaltered.
Unaltered, yeah. Who's going to alter it? Me. I don't like it. I want it to change. But what are you going to change it into? Whatever you change it into, it's just going to be phenomena. And phenomena just changes. It's not real. It's the unmanifest that's real. And that's what you are. You are the unmanifest. There's no time for the spirit. The spirit is ageless. It never gets old and dies. Some call it the soul. You know, as Bob would say, I've got three souls, you know.
Back to the assholes again.
But
Recurring theme.
Souls on each other.
Yes.
when I was a young fellow, I had 22 aunties and uncles, and my grandmother, and they were all old. They were all in their 60s and whatever when I was 10 or something. And they'd all, most of them would say, I don't feel old, It's only when I look in the mirror I can't recognise myself. So, that's enough from me.
Jane,
Yeah.
you wanted to say something, Bob?
Yeah.
After Bob.
Gilbert pointed out that it's all images. What do you do about that? Well, listen to what Nisargadatta says. Nothing can trouble you except your own imagination, what you are imaging in. And that's all we're doing. We're creating this mental or conceptual images and taking them to be real, and that's the trouble. But an image, what do you see in a mirror? An image in the mirror or a reflection. Go up and try and grab it. How real is it? It's hard. So you can't say it's not there because it's appearing before your very eyes. But you can't say it is there because you can't grasp anything at all. Grasp the thought that tells you this is body-mind. Hang on to a thought if you can.
I was just going to say that that image we have about ourselves is time-bound, and that time is a concept as well. And all conflict arises between me and the other person, place or thing. In other words, we get caught up in the narration of the fact, or the narration and separation that we're separate, and we've spent our lives identifying with that me, that separate entity, and then there's a response to that me, whether it's, as you said, Zane, I'm scared to say something. Well, all our lives we've been protecting this me, we've been trying to closet it, and what we've done is we've kept it vulnerable, to any sort of attack. And the mind's nature is to work in the pairs of opposites, me and the other person, place or thing. So what Bob's pointed out is there is no me. That is the persona, that is the image that we have about ourselves. But old habits die hard, even though we know in reality there is only one. And we've known that ever since we were little, as Julia correctly pointed out. You look into a baby's eyes and there's, stillness. Well, that stillness is with us always, every single second. And the narration or the image we have about ourselves is on the top. If using words to describe. But it's all an illusion. There is no me and the other. There is no time. There is only one. But at times it really feels like there is, because that old habit is so strong, or allegedly strong. It actually isn't. but it's allegedly been pointed that it is, and old habits die hard. So, what's been pointed not only by Bob, but everyone who's seen the truth is that there is only one. It's at the core of all the great religions. It's at the core of all great understandings.
Okay, I have someone here from online community and it is John David, and he answers that in one word: unborn. But I would also like to acknowledge that, regardless of that fear, you actually genuinely really want to, and you love the truth, and you want to get that clear. So even though it was threatening, you actually came out and asked the question, which is wonderful. But also it is really kind of nice to look at where is that fear come from, because Nisargadatta told us that every problem we can ever have is the problem of the body. So how is that applying, or how is that related to the body? And of course body-mind is one thing, that not two things, because without that mind it can't operate, it's dead. So it's how it relates to body-mind. And in the fear, the origination of that fear, and apparently statistically it is being said that people have more of the fear of public speaking than the fear of death. I mean, how can you fear death? Death is non-existent, there's nothing to fear, but the fear of dying, like if you die in torture, pain, there's fear of pain, not fear of death really. But because it's such a common thing, if you look back in the origination of that fear, even look at the wildlife, look at the community of the bonobo monkeys or whatever, and you see that if someone comes out and speaks and is rejected by the whole village, by the whole community, that someone is not going to be able to survive. That someone is basically killed. This is death. I mean, if you speak up something and suddenly you make fool of yourself, and we all hate you, and we all want to get rid of you, and we all just have nothing but violent thoughts and exclusion, that's the end of you. I mean, on the tribal sort of instinctual level, the brain is wired, the whole machinery is wired towards loving to be, meaning survival. So to actually have that sense of reservation before you put yourself in the fire line, in danger, and the rejection, absolute rejection of the whole community is death. So it is totally justified. So having that and overcoming that is absolutely beautiful. The suffering comes with the narrative when it says, oh, this is fear. This is not fear really, it's just a sensation. It's just a sort of like almost like Jane sometimes says, she's a performer, gathering of the energy to actually be able to deliver it. So it doesn't even need to be called fear. When it is called fear, what's wrong with me? Why am I not getting it? Why am I so self-obsessed? Oh, this is wrong, I shouldn't be feeling it. Well, I don't know how is the wildlife creature who is going to stand up to the alpha and speak in front going to feel whether the energy is going to be buzzing through the body. Probably yes, but the narrative doesn't have to be there, so you can actually enjoy and still come out, and please do enjoy that sort of a tingling sort of energy, and yes, bring up all of those doubts, because
and I just wanted to say that it was just coming up really strongly that everybody that's ever talked about this stuff, including you, Bob, and Christ, and all the seers, sages, and prophets from the past, they've all had the courage to speak out, despite the whole community wanting to bloody stone them and crucify them, and and that's kind of how we feel when we first come and we want to speak out. We think, oh well, despite the fact they're going to crucify me, I'm going to speak out anyway.
They won't crucify you, they'll put you in a loony bin.
Whatever your experience is.
But you touched on it when you talked about there was awareness of it all. As Krishnamurti, we looked at this Krishnamurti years ago. There's an awareness of the tree, and there was a response to that tree. That response is thought, feeling, and emotion. You see the tree just as it is. But when you put the concepts of the tree, you're not seeing the tree. You're just seeing your concepts. And you're like, can there be an awareness of the tree without any response? And can there be a response to the tree? In that way, we stay in the natural state.
That's right. That's right. Beautifully said, Bob. And if anyone wants to know about that book, it's the second Penguin Reader, Krishnamurti, the chapter on awareness. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant pointer.
I had a few copies of it printed here, didn't we?
I just wanted to point out as well that everybody who has a body that has an awakening still has a body, or still has an apparent body. There's not a person owning it. That's what changes, is the identification. So there's still, to me it's like transparencies. There's still the classic example that I always use is modern day Ramana. When he had a full awakening, he just went quiet, stopped talking, stopped eating. He wasn't present for a lot of the time. He didn't speak. So there's some people have awakenings and they just stop talking. They go very quiet because. And there are other people who are, but he came back. He came back into his person. So he still lived through the apparent person. So there is a living occurring. There is a leela, a dance of manifestation. It's just about where you place your identification. There's a sort of difference, I believe, in my experience, about the fact that nothing's rejected. No experiences are rejected. No manifestation is rejected. There's no like or dislike. It just is. But there's also something much more profound than that occurring at the same time. At the level of awareness, and identification.
Well said.
That's the problem. We think one awakening is better than another. More profound. And discriminate them again. But what's awakening? That's awareness, not a total awareness. If you're aware, you're awake. You're certainly not asleep.
I'll have a couple of comments here. Manju says, yes, unborn, and is everywhere and everything that is manifested. And Vivek says, me is individual. Individual means separation. Separation is dualism, world. Dualism is fear.
Oh yeah, I just have to share a little story, because I can't give a pointer like everyone, all the intelligent people. I can only talk shit. so I was in the chook house this morning. No.
Even though we wear pants.
But this story, this morning, I go to feed the chooks, and I'm in the chook house. I come back in the house, and Josh comes in and says, I can smell chook shit. I can smell chicken shit. And I said, I smell like chicken shit, right? And then I started repeating. As he walked out, I said, I am chicken shit, right? I am chicken shit, right? And then I just started I'm chicken shit. And then I actually became the expression chicken shit. I actually, this fear, this energy of fear bubbled up out of nowhere. And then I started singing a chicken shit song because it was absolutely hilarious. This can't exist. It's absolute madness. It's not existing for anyone. So then I just became chicken shit all the whole drive here, and it was the funniest thing ever because there's no one for anything to be stuck to.
Yes.
And the whole point, it's just fantastic. So that's my little story.
Lovely.
And also what came up for me was that fantastic expression, false evidence appearing real, with fear, and, I heard that acronym ages ago, but, it sort of really resonates because, there's got to be a me to have fear. And then when you see that the false evidence appearing real is appearing to a me, it just all sort of disintegrates, That's how I see it.
That could be a total book. I am chicken shit.
Yeah,
Nothing can touch me.
And who would want to?
Just Bob.
But that was a good insight. But we're taking the words chicken shit and putting more importance into them, seeing it was an insight, a recognition of how things were.
Mm-hmm. My dad used to have this terrible expression. It was, my mother gave birth to a boy and a turd, and the boy died.
Whoa.
So we're on the shit theme now.
Yeah, it's not that far from us, foster shit. And Julia was talking about dog shit, Dean about chicken shit. Anybody else?
Chicken shit. Yeah, shit.
Bullshit.
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 Lotus can't grow without.
Lotus can't grow, that's
Without.
right. Yeah.
The compost without
That's
the
right.
shit. The
I love
lotus needs it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and we are the lotus.
So
You got a shit song.
Possibly.
Assholes?
This could be.
Yeah, give us
Do you
some.
sit here? Do you sit here? Be easier. Do you sit? Do you sit here? Might be
Okay,
easier.
okay. Thank you.
what is it that makes us tear the page and begin again? What is it that makes us weep and feel our pain? Invisible, indivisible, unspeakable aching in my heart. Invisible, indivisible, unspeakable aching in my heart. Wings of love, carry me, carry you, till we meet, till we part. The thread we feel that links us so through the universe, it goes past all time, past all space, to places forgotten, deep and holy. The first kiss our souls meet, this healing in a blinding flash. I fall from the sky, looking at your beauty. Why the sword? Why the chain? Why the logs, the guns, a wicked chance? Fly, this sorrow, this joy, this let go, hello, hello, goodbye. Invisible, indivisible, unspeakable radiance we hold. Invisible, indivisible, unspeakable radiance we hold. Indivisible, unspeakable radiance we hold. Invisible, indivisible, unspeakable radiance we hold. Invisible, indivisible, unspeakable radiance we hold. Invisible, indivisible, unspeakable radiance we hold.
Thank you.
That radiated all round and round.
Yeah, well done. Singing. You can have Sailor Bob's choir.
Yeah, why not?
Silence sings.
Yes.
Don't talk about chicken shit, right?
Yeah, it felt important. I don't think I even actually had a specific question before, but I was so involved in myself that I needed to just say something to break through that. But now I have a question.
Good.
Yeah. It seems like there's this real desperation to have an understanding of some sort, but at the same time there's a great resistance to it. And when I was here last week, what was coming up was like, why am I here? Like, who's seeking this? Like, what am I seeking? Why am I here? And who's doing it? If we're already aware of that, like, why are we all here?
Being in the company of truth is as Kavish has so beautifully put in that song, it's holy. You know, I know that's a label, but there's something beautiful to be with people who are on the same wavelength. You know,
But mainly, why were you here?
and even though you know, you take yourself wherever you go, or you're in it. The reality takes you wherever you go. You don't take yourself. You know, why not be with those that are, you know, resonating? You know, so yeah.
And also nurturing that you know, that spark, if you like. That it's good to be with people that help you grow it and help that awareness grow. Like we're all like in a garden, you know, in the company of, you know.
And also, this is experiential. It's experience. It's not a conceptual thing, although we discuss it sometimes in conceptual things, but it's actually direct experiencing. And there's something, it's quite remarkable to be with people who just are in the moment experiencing. You've experienced that. It's just a joy. Why don't we want to do that all the time? You know, it's experiencing,
And
not the mind.
And when you know, the concept of holy, of course, comes from wholeness, you know, and that's really what it's about. It's not about piety or some sort of pining for idealism. It is that experiential knowing that's direct experience without concept.
Yes, it is about the whole.
Yeah.
Bob wanted to say something. Bob wanted to say something. Oops, I got it the wrong way. Bob, go on.
Well, something resonates. It's an inner nature. There's something innately that draws you to it. Might be unknowing by the mind, but something resonates. And you want to hear more, and it takes you where you're going. You might consider it a lot of rubbish for a start off, but something grabs you.
But watch out for the question.
It's your own innate intelligence that's recognising, or trying to recognise itself. But we block it out with all the conceptual ideas on. Just let it be. Just go with the flow. See where it takes you.
And when you ask question why, I got the feeling that you actually ask why am I here? But see what happens. Suddenly everyone wants to answer the question why with a different story. Because that's what the why does. It invites the mind to justify. Why you here? I tell you, because life brought you here. It's not that you had any choice. It's not that what you think is the real motivation. It's an absolute mystery how the life unfolds. Why we do what we do, we can have tons of justifications. We can blame it on the childhood or on the weather or anything else. But the truth is, we are not the doers. We did not come here to get something or to understand or to resonate. No, we did not come here at all because we are not the doers. It's just life expressing this way. But when you ask the question, why am I even here? Look who is questioning. Look, who wants to know who is there? Who is
I think
there?
that was my question.
He
also.
did.
I thought
who
so.
is he?
I
Who's
thought
coming
so.
here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Stay with that though.
Yeah.
I had too many questions.
And I
for
think-
that. that was the real question.
So, some of you might be aware of something called the Urban Guru Cafe. Many years ago, I got in touch with a guy called David Godman, who was the chief librarian at Arunachala, and he's written books on Ramana and whatever. Anyway, he sent me a whole bunch of tapes of Nisargadatta's meetings, and a lot of them, the sound wasn't very good, but some of them were. And on the Urban Guru Cafe, there's Nisargadatta's meeting. Not Ramana, no. He didn't talk. Anyway, this question came up in the recording. It's on the Urban Guru Cafe. So there's a young man, a young seeker in the meeting, and he says to Nisargadatta, "Why am I here? Why is it that I'm here?" And Nisargadatta says, "How did the space come into the house, into the room? How did the space come into the room?" He says, "The space didn't come into the room. Something is building the house in the space." Present tense. Something is building the house in the space. And it's very subtle, it's a pointing. Something in the mental activity is building this structure of me and house and whatever. But the thing that doesn't change is the space like awareness. So why am I here? What am I doing here? It's a great question. And Papaji was another one of Ramana's students, if you can call him that. And when he went to visit Ramana, at one point, Ramana said, "How did you get here?" He said, "I came in the rickshaw." And he says, "Where's the rickshaw now?" "Oh, it's gone." And before that, he said, "I caught a taxi." "Where's the taxi now?" "It's gone." And before that, "I caught the train from Madras." "And where is the train?" "It's gone." You get it? It's like we have these stories about how we got here, and that becomes a burden because you've always been here. Really, in essence, there's only one consciousness or awareness. There's no story of getting here.
Yeah. Can anything be pointed out in space as a centre to it?
No.
Or here?
No.
Anywhere that's not here?
Yeah. That's why the word self-centre is such a fiction, because how can there be a static thing called a self-centre when there's no static point in space? What would it be resting on? Floating in nothingness. So all of our stories of supporting the me are a fiction. And the sooner you see that, the better.
When you look at it, the whole of the world is appearing in the space. And it doesn't, you might be seeing it through the eye, but there's nothing in your eye to say it's a centre. There's none of you people are in the eye. The carpet or the trees are not in the eye, seen through the eye.
I have a couple of comments also here. Gudula says, for the joy of sharing this. And Heyman says, I don't expect Sailor Bob to walk through the wall or blow my mind by reading my mind or even tell me something uplifting or something that can ease the turmoil in my neck. Just tell me I love you without sarcasm in your voice. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you, Heyman. And Vivek says, why am I here? To hear the message of freedom. And that is actually a good answer. Yeah. Thank you, Vivek, too. Because, see, the mind which always have those stories and those concepts, it has this very subtle concept that it doesn't get it, and it may need to get it, or want to get it, or will get it in the future. And it has a subtle concept also. What is it that it is going to be got that is not here presently? And that is usually because the mind thinks dualistically. So it is usually the absence of pain and the presence of pleasure. There is not enough pleasure right now in this moment. So the mind, the thinking pattern, which is naturally designed for survival, meaning seeking pleasure, it has this concept that there is a great enlightenment, which is a steady supply of constant pleasure or ecstasy, which is impossible because the brain is also have the fuses, and a serotonin shock is quite a quick death. But the concept is there that there is something to achieve, and there is someone who can achieve it. So the message of truth is really why even the logic, the mind, the thinking, there is an attraction to hearing it. And the message is the one who wants to achieve it, the ones who wants to get enlightened, will never get it, because that's the imagined self, that's the illusory self. So it really is no point for the mind to hear anything apart from the fact that the answer is not in the mind. And the mind can never get it, and it needs to rest its case. But it can't do it because its nature is to seek. So mind will continue seeking, whether for more money or for more pleasure or for enlightenment. That's its nature. That's how the program operates. But repeated constantly, that narrative which verifies and compares and interprets everything, when it hears it repeatedly, it may start lowering the guards and let it go deeper and sink to the point when there is a resonance on the level of the heart. In the heart, when there is no thinking, there is nothing wrong, nothing needs to be achieved, there is no desire for pleasure, because those things are superficial movement of the mind. But bypassing that movement of the mind, there is nothing wrong already. And it is the mind, the functioning of the mind, the operation of that dualism, of that energy moving, that clouds that natural state, that natural ease of being, and that nothing is wrong anymore. And recognizing from that stillness the movement of the mind brings the perspective back, brings the background to the front, brings up the realization that, I am there, like Gilbert was saying, prior to the thinking. What is it that never changes? What is it where the seeking mind appears and disappears on and off? And this is really not a message for the mind, but initially there is no other way to hear it than through the mind. Initially you hear the same thing, you're already that, just quit seeking, it's all fine. Well, but I don't feel fine. Oh, okay, later on, yeah, okay, I agree with you, but intellectually, but I don't feel it. Still subtle idea that there is a feeling of pleasure that is missing or is absent, and it should be there. And then eventually, as those ideas are seen through, the natural state, which initially for the mind is bullshit, nothing, there's nothing there. What a big deal, all talking about nothing. That nothing gets completely different dimension, and it becomes no thing, full of radiance, like Kavisha was singing, radiance and aliveness and beauty and freshness. That which looked through the mind is just void, yuck, nothing. Embraced by the heart is the true bliss of being, true joy of being. But initially, yes, the mind filters everything, and rather than, the whole seeking path is seemingly forgetting the truth or clouding the truth with ideas and concepts, just to go back to it by completely recognizing clouds to be irrelevant and unimportant.
Beautiful. If I don't mind, it doesn't matter.
Yes. And now we have comment from JB. Thank you, Bob, for another wonderful Sunday. Thank you all, and have a great after-meeting meal. And Heyman sends the hi.
Oh, and come again tomorrow if you want to do it on Zoom. If you're in the North American time zone, or even here, 9:30 in the morning Melbourne time, but whatever you are, that's when it is on Zoom. And you can find the details on Bob's website.
Thank you.
Well, everybody's got a taste of it. Listen to what came out of a few of you this morning.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob and Kat.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.